Welcome back. Emmanuel Macron may have blinked first, but French protesters say they won't back down. They're resisting the government's concession yesterday to suspend proposed fuel tax hikes and instead say the Yellow Vest protest will continue. In fact, new factions are emerging almost daily. High school students set fires outside schools yesterday, protesting government reforms to the university application process. Now, the Yellow Vest demonstrations have been growing for over 3 weeks, turning violent at times. 3 people have died and historic monuments have been vandalized. All of this highlighting the vulnerability of Emmanuel Macron's presidency amid calls for him to step down. All right, the city of Lille has also seen Yellow Vest protests, and that's where we find our Euronews correspondent Annelise Borges tonight. Annelise, good to see you there. You have been spending a lot of time the past few days with the Yellow Vest protesters. So are they emboldened by this government U-turn that we saw yesterday?
In one word, Tessa, yes, absolutely. They have been talking about the fact that this changes nothing, that the government did not make a significant concession. But the fact of the matter is this is a government that had insisted it would not change course, and it has made a significant U-turn. These protesters here in the northern part of France have been telling me they don't even want to talk to Emmanuel Macron anymore. They don't want to listen from Emmanuel Macron anymore. They don't trust the French president, and they don't believe the French president is going to do anything to change their lives. These are the French people who are struggling. They say France has become too expensive. They can no longer afford vacations. They can no longer afford a new car. They can no longer afford food and electricity bills in some cases. Several of them have been telling me that they can't make ends meet and that they are very concerned about the future. They have been asking Emmanuel Macron for more justice in France, and they say the message wasn't heard. We decided to come here and to spend time with the Yellow Vests to try to understand who they are and what they want.
For 3 weeks now, France has been on fire. Anger is fueling the biggest opposition movement the administration of Emmanuel Macron has faced so far. And the government's change in strategy didn't convince protesters, who say they will continue feeding the flames that brought them here.
On ne va pas arrêter parce que ce que Edouard Philippe a dit tout à l'heure, de geler, je ne suis pas d'accord. Parce que dans 6 mois, ça va être belote. On est là demain, après-demain, à Noël, à Nouvel An, au mois de janvier, février, mars, avril. Voilà.
The so-called Yellow Vests have been shaking France to its core. These men and women say they are the true face of this country. The face of social injustice, of anger, but also fear and humiliation.
Savoir si je vais réussir à garder un logement ou si, comme pas mal de monde, je me retrouve à la rue. C'est le problème pour beaucoup de personnes.
Et ça fait peur?
Ça fait peur, ouais.
Je suis au chômage, j'ai dû repartir chez mes parents. À 33 ans, c'est un peu compliqué. Moi, j'ai 2 enfants. Je suis divorcé. Il y a la pension alimentaire. J'ai revendu la maison. Et je cherchais un logement, mais comme j'ai perdu mon emploi, aux ACDIC, même pas 1 200 € par mois, c'est dur de trouver un logement.
This group of protesters has been gathering in the outskirts of Lille in northern France for 3 weeks now. We asked to join them for a night to understand who exactly they are and if they can stick together.
Vous vous sentez quand même assez unis dans le mouvement, parce que c'est des personnalités différentes.
Vous savez, comme elle a dit la personne, même ceux qui disent notre force, c'est justement la diversité. On a des retraités, maintenant on a des étudiants qui commencent aussi à suivre le mouvement. On a des gens qui travaillent, qui se lèvent tôt, on a des chômeurs, on a des personnes handicapées. Donc voilà, il a le peuple là, contre lui.
He is Emmanuel Macron. The French president is the target of the Yellow Vests' disappointment, but also of their sense of humor.
Vous avez l'Élysée ou pas?
Bonsoir madame, est-ce qu'on pourrait demander à Macron qu'il démissionne s'il vous plaît?
Je n'ai pas d'actualité, merci, bonne soirée, au revoir.
Au revoir. C'était l'Elysée. Je voulais vous faire profiter avec l'Elysée.
Son mépris total, quoi. Depuis qu'il est élu, il a fait que de la provocation. Maintenant, vous voyez, il a commencé à mettre un genou à terre et il va être à terre.
The Yellow Vests want the government to lower taxes, raise the minimum salary, and improve their living conditions. They also have some more ambitious demands that include the resignation of Emmanuel Macron. Some within the movement, however, see things differently and don't rule out the possibility of joining the political scene.
Les gilets jaunes, ils représentent le peuple et il y aura un parti, j'en suis persuadé. On est obligé d'écouter le peuple. Maintenant, il y en a marre que ce soit des énarques, des technocrates qui ne peuvent pas savoir en fait ce qu'on ressent, le peuple, qui se lève justement tôt, qui travaille difficilement, ou bien qui sont en situation de handicap et qu'on ne les aide pas, qu'on les laisse pour compte, il y en a assez. Maintenant, ce qu'il nous faut, c'est des représentants qui sont partis de notre parti, de notre en fait, voilà, situation.
It's unclear what's next for the Yellow Vests and where the movement can take France. What is certain is that those who have felt ignored by power have now succeeded in making themselves visible again. Annelise Borges in northern France for Euronews.
So there you have at least a small part of this story of the men and women across France who say it is time for the government to see and listen to them.
All right, thank you for that, Annelise Borges, talking to us from Lille, and she's with the Yellow Vest protesters there. And joining me in the studio to discuss this further is French MEP from Les Républicains, Angélique Delahaye, Brian McGuire, an Irish journalist and reporter with Euractiv, and still with me, Darren McCaffrey, our political editor at Euronews. Angélique, I'll start with you because Annelise was saying there it is unclear where this movement is going to take France. What do you think?
Well, it's a pity for me to see our citizens, French citizens, in this way of life. Our president is huge. He has to understand, he has to ask, to answer what the French people need. I think this increase of taxes is just the only small things, just because our citizens are over all those taxes and they want to live with what they win from their work. And in France, some people, more people than each month, you have more people who thought that it's more difficult to live when you work and you have a small
salary.
Yeah.
So this is,
it's more difficult than to be helped. So it's like they thought that it's not justice, and they want more justice.
So the fuel tax, in fact, is just a trigger.
The answer of the president to wait for 6 months to decide about taxes is not the answer. We have to break down those taxes, just because they don't know what the money is doing with the money of these taxes.
As Angélique was saying, this is just a suspension. 6 months down the line, it's like kicking the can down the road. We'll have the same conversation again. But what can the government realistically do at this point?
There's a big dichotomy in terms of who's talking about what here. Macron and what they would say is the global elite are talking about the end of the world. These people are talking about the end of the month. Mm-hmm. They want to see food on the table. This man we saw in Annelise's report, 1,200 a month he gets on income support. The mean income in France for working people is 1,700. So 50% of people in France earn less than 1,700 a month. Yet Macron, at the beginning of his presidency, gives a tax cut to the wealthy. 1% of people in France own 20% of wealth.
Is this something that was brewing, Darren? Well, not just now, but the austerity, the years of austerity.
Let me be blunt about this. Do the Yellow Vest protesters have no one to blame but themselves? These scenes we see in France are a lot worse than we have seen in recent years, but they are familiar. People taking to the streets when a government tries to initiate reform. One of the reasons that the French economy has not grown as strongly as other Western European economies, even and in despite of 2008, countries like Holland and Germany, is because it has not been able to reform. So I don't know how a French President, Emmanuel Macron, can be blamed for all the ills of French society when he has been president for a relatively short period of time.
The critical mass that
These
we're
have been
reaching
around for a long time.
Exactly.
And whether it's Nicolas Sarkozy, whether it's François Hollande, they've been trying to reform France for years. Certain sections of French society are not letting it happen. And then they take to the streets again to complain about stopping reform that may well have helped.
No, certainly. I think this has been simmering for some time now. And we've heard a lot about the Yellow Vest movement in France. And now it appears that protesters actually in other countries are joining this movement to express their anger as well. Alex Morgan in theCUBE has more on this part of the story. Alex?
Tessa, do you remember these scenes? Police cars overturned, yellow jacket protesters clashing with authorities. Well, these scenes weren't in Paris. In fact, they weren't even in France. This was Belgium. Last week, yellow jacket protesters clashing in the EU quarter of Brussels with police in the riot gear we, of course, seen in France. These protesters protesting against what they say are rising living costs, higher taxes, but those yellow jackets mimicking, copying the gilets jaunes in France. Of course, this becoming now seemingly a political statement across the EU for discontent. Let's bring up this, though. Outside of the EU, check this video out. It shows a Serbian opposition MP putting on a gilet jaune, if you like, a yellow jacket here in the Serbian parliament. Of course, this outside the EU. Here, the symbol again being used, though, to protest against rising fuel costs. But now let me show you this, moving well beyond the streets of Europe. Let me show you these images of people in yellow jackets, starting with the top one, actually. If we go up here, you can see riot-clad police here and a protester in a yellow jacket. That could be like any of the cities we've seen, but this is Basra. This is in Iraq. These scenes showing clashes on Tuesday between security forces and protesters. So what is going on here? Why are the yellow jackets now in Iraq? Let me bring up some of the key points these demonstrators are making. Well, this latest round of demonstrations is all about basic services. Protesters in Baghdad wanting the authorities to deal with a lack of public services like clean drinking water, electricity. The latest unrest began in June, but I think the key thing here, NBC News speaking to people on the ground about these yellow jackets. Well, one of the organisers saying it's a return to yellow jackets. Actually, the Iraqis wore these in 2015 during similar demonstrations. It is fair to say, though, they've been inspired to go back to them after what's happened in France, sort of a more unified symbol, if you like, of the discontent. But let's just round this up for you here. Brussels, Basra, Paris. We are now seeing the gilet jaune, the yellow jacket, being used by people around the world, almost a global show of discontent. Tessa.
All right, thank you for that, Alex and the CUBE team. So it seems that the yellow vest has become a symbol really of a larger inequality that we're seeing, not just in France.
Not just in France, but in France we have our own history. We do the revolution. And I think, I understand reform, it's quite difficult to do in France, but the reform done by Mr. Macron is not social justice. And French people need social justice.
And very quickly, is this something that's waiting to explode on a broader level, the inequality we see around the world?
Yes. First of all, inequality is bad for everybody. It's bad for the rich and the poor because economies don't grow. Unless we address the widening inequality and within Europe, within France and globally, we will see stronger and more aggressive counter-revolutions like this.
Right.
Clearly, there might be one winner, though, which is the people who manufacture yellow jackets.
Well, there you go. There you go. And it seems that it is spreading. All right.